8 years ago, we got a Star Wars movie that gave us a lot of things we hadn't seen. We had a story that didn't focus on the Skywalkers. We had a story where the main characters didn't survive. And we had a Darth Vader massacre scene. But one of the many things that this film gave us was the return of Grand Moff Tarkin on the big screen in live action for the first time since 1977. And we actually saw the original actor's face on screen over 2 decades after he passed away. And it's that last part that got Disney and Lucasfilm in a bit of legal trouble, but is it that much trouble? A man by the name of Kevin Francis, who is the head of Tyburn Film Productions and reportedly a friend of Peter Cushing, is suing a Disney-owned company and by extension Disney themselves because Peter Cushing's likeness was used in the 2016 movie Rogue One, and it was done without his permission. Now, why would they need this guy's permission? I mean, they already got permission from Cushing's family and paid them, even though they didn't feel like they needed to do that much. So why would they need to talk to this guy? Well, apparently Peter Cushing and Kevin Francis were not only friends and working on a film together before Peter Cushing died, but they also made a deal that any of Peter Cushing's likeness approval will go through Francis and his company. So any licensing that needed to be done to use Peter Cushing's likeness would have to go through Tyburn and Kevin Francis. And it's that agreement that's the source and catalyst of this legal battle. Now, while this sounds like it could blow up and turn into a very dramatic legal proceeding, I don't think it will. As somebody who's definitely and officially not a lawyer, I just know how to read a little bit, I see really 2 obstacles that this guy has to jump over just to make this claim relevant, let alone legitimate. But first, let's talk about the timeline of everything so we're all on the same page, and then we can talk about how hard this case is going to be to win. In 1977, Star Wars releases to theaters, and it's during the making of this film that Peter Cushing signed his original licensing deal with Lucasfilm for his likeness and the Tarkin character. Then all the way in 1993, Kevin Francis and Peter Cushing make this agreement for any licensing of Peter Cushing's likeness to go through Francis's company, Tyburn. Then the next year, 1994, Peter Cushing passes away. 22 years after that, in 2016, Lucasfilm, which is now owned by Disney, has made a new Star Wars film that includes the character that Cushing played. And even though Lucasfilm has already paid the rights to that character and didn't necessarily need to get any external approval, they still went to the Cushing estate and paid about $28,000 to use Cushing's likeness in the movie. And now almost a decade later, Francis is suing because he feels like he's the one that should have been consulted and should have been paid. Now, after reading all of this, I came away with really 3 main questions. 1, why did it take so long to sue? Number 2, if that 1993 agreement between him and Cushing actually happened, then is it legally binding because Lucasfilm already had the rights to Cushing's likeness for the Tarkin character? And number 3, if none of the Disney-owned companies knew about the competing claim for Peter Cushing's likeness, then are they still liable? Like I said in the beginning, I see 2 main obstacles that this guy has to overcome in this case. And the first is the agreement itself. I don't know all the ins and outs of all the different contracts, but if Peter Cushing did agree and make a deal with Tyburn to have all of his likeness approval go through them, I feel like that would have to apply to everything outside of Star Wars. Because if Lucasfilm has the rights to his likeness as it relates to the Tarkin character, to which they must feel like they do, they felt like they did to the point where they didn't feel like they needed to go to his estate for Rogue One, but I guess they were advised to do it anyway, so they just went ahead and paid them that money just to cover their bases. But if that's the case, then the deal in the 70s would set the precedent, and I don't think that the 1993 deal would be able to supersede the original agreement. But even if it did, because I'm not a lawyer and there are all kind of loopholes in the law, so let's just say for the sake of argument, he gets past that obstacle, right? He would still need to be able to prove that someone over at Disney knew about his competing claim when they paid the money for Rogue One. In the Times article that kind of details what's going on, they mentioned that part of Disney's defense and response to this is that they were, I quote, bona fide purchaser of value, which basically means that on their end, the purchase was made in good faith and they had no idea or no knowledge of any competing claim. So not only does this man need to prove that his agreement with Cushing supersedes the one Cushing made with Lucasfilm? He also needs to show that someone at Disney or Lucasfilm or somewhere over on that side of things knew about his claim and ignored it. And after all that, I think there are two likely possibilities. I think it's entirely possible that this man just forgot about the deal that he made with Cushing. It was in 1993, and the new movie came out in 2016, 2 decades after that man died. I think he might have just forgot that this deal was made and that he had this claim. And maybe he came across some old files or somebody saw something and reminded him, and now he's bringing it to light. Or maybe he just never saw Rogue One. I don't know, that man's in his 70s, so he might not be going to see Star Wars films, and he just now found out about it. The other possibility is that he actually has something. Like he has some piece of information that shows that the Disney group knew about his competing claim when they paid for Rogue One and just chose to ignore it. And it took him this long to get that piece of information, so that's why he's bringing the suit now. I think it's infinitely more likely that it's the first option, but what about you? Do you think that this case is going to blow up into something big, or do you think it's going to go away as swiftly as it popped up? Let me know what you think. We can get into it down in the comments. We can talk about it, and as this case develops, if it develops, we'll come back and talk about it. Thanks for stopping by, and I'll catch you guys next time.